They say civilizations rise and fall. But me?
For thousands of years, I was a secret, buried under layers of time. A ghost story whispered on the wind.
This is Harappa. Think of it as my ancient New York.
But the crown jewel of my public works, that would be the Great Bath. And then there's this guy. We call him the Priest King. We don't know if he was a priest or a king, but he was definitely important and stylish. What did I want to say? What secrets are locked away in my writing? That, my friends, is the ultimate cliffhanger.
Now, let's talk about what I believed in. This is one of my most debated seals. Some see a proto-Shiva here.
Let's get one thing straight. I was big, bigger than Egypt and Mecca combined.
And this was its twin city, Mohenjo-Daro, the Mound of the Dead. A bit of a dramatic name, I know.
The heart of the home was a central courtyard. It was our kitchen, our living room, and our connection to the sky.
This wasn't just a swimming pool. It was a masterpiece of engineering. I had artisans of every kind. My potters were masters of the wheel.
We made tons of these little terracotta figures, animals, carts, and lots of female forms.
I had a system. My weights were standardized across 1 million square kilometers. A merchant in Harappa used the exact same weight as one in Mohenjo-Daro. And I wasn't just big, I was organized. Welcome to my world, one of the first great urban centers in history. Check out my bricks. Standardized, mass-produced. I was all about that quality control. And get this, many of my houses had their own private wells. Fresh water, delivered right to your door.
The construction was so precise, so waterproof, with layers of natural tar, that it could still hold water today.
We loved our art. Our pottery was often decorated with these cool geometric designs or scenes from nature.
I wasn't isolated. I was a global trader. My goods traveled hundreds, even thousands of miles. I was also a bit of a math nerd. My weight system was incredibly precise, using both binary and decimal systems, way ahead of my time. Even in death, I was practical. My people were buried simply, with a few pots for the afterlife. These seals are one of my greatest treasures. Each one is a miniature work of art, featuring animals and my writing.
My cities fell silent, my river-venged cause.
Our graves tell the same story. No grand pharaoh-style burials here. I treated most of my people equally, even in death.
We weren't giants, but we were well-nourished thanks to our stable food supply. Our clean cities also helped prevent the spread of disease.
We knew the elephant well, a symbol of power, and, maybe, another one of my working animals.
But the problem is, all my writing is in short bursts. I never wrote a long letter or a book. It's like you only having Twitter to figure out all of English. We've found evidence of massive floods in my cities. Not the gentle, life-giving kind, but destructive.
I couldn't have done it without my animal friends. The zebu was my tractor and my transport.
The other popular theory is the exact opposite. Not too much water, but not enough. A long, devastating drought.
My ideas may have survived too. I am the Indus Valley Civilization. I am the beginning. And
And the biggest problem? I never wrote a book. My thoughts survive only in these short, cryptic bursts.
To support this global trade, I built wonders of engineering. And next time, we'll visit my...
We didn't have soap, but we used scrapers like these to clean our skin. It works surprisingly well.
I created thousands of these female figures. Were they goddesses of fertility?
The evidence is buried deep in ancient caves and frozen in Himalayan ice. The climate.
But modern science tells a quieter, sadder story. The bones bear no marks of battle. These people were not massacred.
I am never far from the surface here. My pottery, my bricks, my beads, they are...
Will you be the one to solve my riddles? To finally give me back my voice? Our first major stop was Dilmun, a bustling island trading post. Think of it as the ancient world's Singapore or Dubai. And with the goods came ideas. My traders saw different worlds, different gods, different... And what about my favorite animal? This creature you call a unicorn is on most of my seals. Was it a real animal? In some of my cities, like Kalibangan, I practiced a different kind of ritual.
My cities were impressive, sure, but my real power? It reached far beyond my borders. I was a global brand.
Right next to the dock, I had a massive warehouse, raised on a brick platform to protect the goods. I told you, I thought of everything.
But my signature product, my designer brand, was always my jewelry, especially my long carnelian beads.
This system meant everyone was on the same page. It created trust, and trust is the foundation of any good economy. It's not like other ancient writing. It's not quite pictures, not quite an alphabet. It's something entirely my own.
Art. I saw divinity in the world around me. The pipal tree, with its distinctive leaves.
The river that fed hundreds of my towns withered away, leaving
it. And they didn't even die at the same time. The massacre was an illusion, a dramatic story told before all the evidence was in.
I built a trade network that was the envy of the ancient world, connecting the Indian subcontinent to the powerhouse civilizations of the West.
Lothal wasn't just a port. It was a major industrial center, famous for producing the jewelry that the world craved. But trade is a two-way street. I had to import the things I didn't have at home. My seals weren't just for signing things. They were for security. If a merchant received a jar with a broken seal, he knew someone had tampered with it.
And I never wrote much at one time. Just short labels. Imagine trying to understand all of English from nothing but brand logos and Twitter handles.
Animals were central to my world. Were the creatures on my seals the symbols of powerful gods?
The carpust. My great cities began to decay from within. The order and cleanliness I was so proud of vanished.
So many questions remain. I am a half-told story, a sentence without an end, a puzzle with most of the pieces still missing.
So if it wasn't invaders, what happened? The answer might be in my writing, but my script remains my most stubborn.
Or was it a shared idea? A common belief system where using the correct, standardized measures was a mark.
Inerrant. The great Indus itself, while it didn't vanish, was severely weakened. For a civilization built entirely...
My overland transport wasn't fast, but it was reliable. These sturdy carts were the trucks of the ancient world. How do we know all this? The Mesopotamians wrote about me. They called me Meluha, the land of exotic goods.
I had plenty of copper, but I needed to import tin to make my strong bronze. And silver, that was purely for luxury.
All this wealth from trade powered my civilization. It paid for my great granaries, my clean water systems, my well-planned streets.
So I had priests,
My script isn't my only secret.
But what about kings?
What did I believe?
This is my
what
only
were the names
statue
of
that
my
looks
gods?
remotely rested. So the world found me again. But finding me and understanding me are two very different things.
It's no random scribble. It has rules, a clear structure, a grammar. This was a true written language. This is why we can't figure out who was in charge. My only portrait of a leader looks more like a spiritual guru than a... The climate shift also affected the sea levels. Some of my great port cities were left stranded. their connection to the world's oceans severed. This wasn't just a harbor. It was one of the world's earliest tidal docks, a marvel of engineering that allowed ships to... I also exported valuable timber. My teak and rosewood were perfect for building their palaces and ships. But how did we pay for all this? No cash, no credit cards. I operated on a sophisticated barter system. Goods for goods. You've seen my homes, my trade, my people. Now, let's step into the shadows. Let's talk about the things you don't know about me.
Perhaps my religion was a more personal, household affair. Small rituals and quiet reverence practiced in the home.
Perhaps my greatest mystery is not how I lived, but why I faded away.
The first interpretation was the most dramatic. These scattered skeletons were presented as proof of my final, violent moment.
And this thing in front of it, its purpose is a complete mystery. Every theory, from a sacred filter to a...
Analysis of ancient pollen and sediment shows a catastrophic, centuries-long drought. The reliable monsoons that fed my rivers simply failed.
The genetic evidence proves there was no great death. My people...
But for the big stuff, I took to the seas. Meet my specialized shipping department, the city of Lothal.
My #1 export? My fine cotton textiles. They were softer and lighter than the wool everyone else was wearing. A true luxury. Engine fliss. Even simple things like shells were part of this global exchange. Certain types, used for trumpets or...
It allowed tens of thousands of my people to be more than just farmers. It created a vibrant, complex, urban society.
I had no palaces, no grand royal tombs, no epic.
I became a global sensation. A lost world, a historical black hole suddenly filled with cities and my most common symbol, the unicorn.
So if my social order was so strong, what could break it? The answer, it seems, came from... But the final clue to my disappearance is in the living. The science of genetics has allowed us to track the movements of my descendants.
My ghost lives on. My legacy is not a ruin. It is a people. Millions of them.
You can find a house, a workshop, or even a public square before anyone ever breaks ground. The age of blind digging is over.
Every new excavation holds the potential for the ultimate prize, the one discovery that could give me back my voice, a bilingual text.
You can even walk through my world again. Virtual reality is bringing my silent cities back to life, allowing anyone to experience them. The greatest secrets are yet to be revealed. The search is on.
The highly specialized skills started to disappear.
The truth became a myth. The history became a bedtime story.
The great archaeologist Alexander Cunningham knew something was wrong. He found one of my little seals.
The floodgates opened. Suddenly, my secrets were pouring out. The great bath, the priest king, the dancing girl.
You think my bricks were just lumps of clay? No, they were a formula, a perfect mathematical ratio that made my construction stable and simple. This precision mattered. It allowed for fair and accurate trade in even the most valuable, lightweight goods.
For decades, the search for my secrets was a slow process of digging in the dirt. But now...
From a single tooth, you can learn about the diseases I carried, the food I ate, where my ancestors came from, and who my living relatives are today.
My secrets are so deep, they are bringing the world together.
A puzzle this big requires the whole human family to solve it. Perhaps the person who will find it has already been born. Perhaps it is you.
My art changed. The perfectly standardized pottery was gone, replaced by new, more regional styles. Even my relationship with death changed. New burial customs emerged, like cremating the dead.
And then came the railways. And with them, my greatest desecration, my ancient bricks.
Slews. The evidence was undeniable. Two massive, ancient cities, 400 miles apart, belonging to the... My walls didn't lean. The simple plumb bob, a weight on a string, was the high-tech tool that helped me build straight and true. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses into the ground, turning the echoes into images. It allows you to map my streets without ever lifting a spade.
You can analyze the chemicals in my teeth and know where I grew up. You can track my life's journey, from my childhood home to my final resting place.
Every clue is now digitized, shared, and studied globally in an instant. The age of isolated discoveries is over.
My story is not over. In fact, after 4,000 years, it feels like it's just beginning again.
You can see the change in our designs. We were still skilled, but the rigid rules of the old days were gone.
Even my weights were a mathematical marvel. For smaller amounts, I used a binary system. Yes,
Patience. I watched the stars wheel overhead. I learned their patterns, their rhythms.
Why did I mass-produce millions of these strange clay triangles? Were they hot plates?
They can detect subtle changes in the soil caused by my buried walls. They can find my lost cities from space.
If such a key is ever found, my silent library...
What will they tell you? Will they confirm what you think you know? Or will they shatter all your theories? Meanwhile, hundreds of miles south, R.D. Banerjee was excavating a Buddhist monument. But he noticed
They found my port city of Lothal, proving my mastery of the seas. My story was no longer just about two big...
Quality control was everything. Every brick, made in 1,000 different kilns, had to be the same. I was obsessed with standards.
This meant everything was consistent. From a single brick to an entire city block, I was built on a foundation of mathematics.
And still, there are objects I left behind that defy all explanation. What were these massive... Your eyes in the sky can see me too. From hundreds of miles up, your satellites can analyze the landscape. There are still hundreds of my settlements that have never been explored. Entire cities. My story didn't end, but it did leave the city. My grand urban experiment was over, but my people lived on.
My famous seals fell out of use. My script, the language of...
And so, over centuries, my final form faded, assimilating into the new cultures that would...
Doesn't that? But my true story began to emerge in the 1920s, thanks to a new generation of archaeologists.
How did I make my cities so neat? With simple, brilliant geometry. Forget GPS, all I needed were ropes and pegs.
And it wasn't just weight. I standardized length, too. This is a piece of one of my rulers. The smallest division on it is just 1.7 millimeters.
But the biggest secret is this. You have barely scratched my surface. For every...
And your new tools can read the stories in my very bones. Ancient DNA analysis is a revolution, a time machine.
And a new generation is leading the search. The children of my land are now the guardians of my story.
My language is not dead. It is merely sleeping. The key is out there, somewhere.
This was the Great Migration. We moved east towards the Great Ganga River system and south.
Our diet changed too. We started growing hardier crops like millets and sorghum that didn't need as much water. We were survivors. He thought he had found a lost fortress of Alexander the Great. He had no idea what he was looking at, but he knew it was ancient.
He found a seal, and he realized it was just like the strange seals found at Harappa.
Today, the search continues with incredible new tools. Drones, satellites, and ground-penetrating radar.
And for my perfect corners, a little trick you might know is the Pythagorean theorem. I was putting it into practice centuries before Pythagoras was even born.
Ceres. The rising of a certain star told me when to plant my crops. The position of another told me when the floods were.
My clothing wasn't just draped, it was tailored. We had needles and thread to create fitted garments, a step beyond a simple robe.
A little food, a little water for the journey ahead. A final act of care. A single death, a single birth, a single day. All were threads. Maybe our status wasn't shown by the size of our houses, but by the things we wore.
I filled my children's world with small joys. Simple toys that let them mimic the sounds and sights of the world around them.
We had systems for waste disposal. I was practicing municipal solid waste management 4 millennia ago.
The river was not just my farm, it was my hunting ground. It provided a constant, reliable source of protein for my people.
It created the freedom to pursue perfection, to take a simple lump of river mud and transform it into something of sublime elegance.
This artistic language was passed down through generations. We taught our children to see the world as we Christus. My art was a reflection of my society. It was balanced, orderly, and confident. It was not the art of glitchy. And while I mostly preferred patterns and animals, sometimes I told stories. This little shard. And while I mostly preferred patterns and animals, sometimes I told stories. This little shard.
It created the space for decoration. Because life was not just about having a pot to hold water.
But my art wasn't just about copying nature. It was about understanding the unseen patterns behind it. The geometry of the cosmos.
It was art made not for the glory of a king, but for the satisfaction of a job well done, and for the use and enjoyment of ordinary people.
And on this piece, a story you might still know today. The clever crow who dropped pebbles in a jar.
Influence. But my art was always personal. I created no colossal statues to intimidate the masses. And the art I created was my ambassador to the world. It spoke of my skill, my sophistication, and my...
In a city of thousands, disagreements were inevitable. But how did I keep the peace without a police force?
Other civilizations built massive palaces for their kings. My largest buildings were for the good of all, to store our shared...
And when a life came to its end, it was a family affair. We cared for our own.
My society valued patience. The patience to turn a dull stone into a gleaming jewel. A process that could take many days. Inches. My art was also about capturing the human spirit. The confidence, the attitude, the grace of a... I may have written in a language you can't read, but I also spoke in a language you can understand. My art was only possible because of my tools, and my tool makers were artists in their own right.
Even in the simplest lump of clay, my artists sought to capture a spark of life, a hint of a soul.
This desire to make, to beautify, to leave a mark, it was at the very core of my being. And while my culture was unified, we still had regional flair. You could tell where a pot was from just by looking at its style.
The answer was likely community. Disputes were probably settled not by force, but by the mediation of respected elders.
This spirit of community was my true strength. I flourished not because of a powerful... My funerals were not grand spectacles. They were quiet, respectful journeys from the home to the grave. It fostered the mastery of difficult materials. To work with gold, you needed a steady hand and a deep understanding of the metal's spirit. This wasn't just a lucky sculpture. It was the result of intense observation, of understanding anatomy, posture, and personality. This was our own form of glass, a ceramic paste we could glaze and fire to create these beautiful, jewel-like...
And this art was not just for the elite. Beauty was democratized. Simple terracotta bangles were... This dedication to quality meant there were failures. But every mistake was a lesson, a step on the path to mastery.
It was an art of precision, of confidence, and of profound mystery.
Dozens. I drew my inspiration from the world around me, the sacred, the natural, the beautiful.
I heard the market will have fresh figs next week. Oh, wonderful. I have a new recipe for fig and honey cakes. We must try it.
Ah, you've got it.
Yes, grandfather.
A clever move.
Open your eyes. Now let me see your tongue.
What price are you offering for these goods?
I can give you 10 bronze pieces, no more.
main artery, the Indus, had two personalities. This was its... When he appears on my seals, he is often with this strange object. Was it a feeding trough?
I respected toughness too. The acacia, with its thorns and its hard wood, was a valuable resource for firewood and tools.
I have shown you the world I saw. But what about the world I believed in? The world... Was this a religious schism, a different sect, or just different traditions coexisting peacefully? As with everything about me, it's a puzzle.
The great summer monsoons, the engine of my agriculture, grew weak, erratic. The rains that had...
My society began to break down. People crowded into the decaying centers of the cities, trying to hold on.
The decline wasn't just in the big things, like rivers. It was in the little things. The highly specialized knowledge,
the laughter of children faded from my streets. The future I had worked so hard to build was cancelled.
Tigris. We did not rebuild Mohenjo-Daro. We adapted.
Our new homes were a fusion of our old ideas.
And this was its gentle side, the life giver. This rhythm of flood and calm.
But the plants that truly built my world were my crops. Wheat was the king, the grain that filled my great granaries and fed my cities. My relationship with the afterlife seems practical. I sent my dead on their way with a few...
For 1,000 years, my world was in balance.
We waited for a rain that came late, or not at all. A season of failed rains was a disaster.
The rules that held my world together were abandoned. Desperation replaced discipline. People did what they had to. We lost the patience for perfection. The demand was for survival, not for luxury. The drive to create masterpieces faded. My great cities did not fall. They emptied. They became shells.
Hidden. My art survived, but it changed. The old symbols took on new life, blending with local tastes.
He appears on my seals more than almost any other creature, a symbol of the wealth that came from the land. And now for my biggest celebrity, the unicorn. Was it a myth, or was I just a...
And for variety, I cultivated all sorts of things. Sweet dates and melons for a treat.
And I wasn't consistent. In some places, at some times, I seemed to practice different rites entirely. Was this a different belief? Or a different people?
Did I invent yoga? Look at this posture. It is the posture of a yogi, a master of meditation.
The very earth moved beneath my feet. And so, the great unraveling was complete. The choice was simple. Stay in the dying city.
And what use was a trade script when there was no trade? The incentive to learn my complex writing system disappeared.
This was my final great migration. Not of conquerors, but of survivors.
Of all the creatures in my kingdom, I respected the bull the most. It was the symbol of strength, of fertility, of raw power.
Sometimes I combined these powerful spirits. My gods, or...
Barley was its tough, reliable cousin, able to grow in conditions where wheat might fail.
No great treasures, no mummification, no elaborate tombs. I wasn't obsessed with preserving...
This endless knot, a symbol of eternity and the interconnectedness of all things, was another part of my symbolic language.
My second great river, the Gagahakra, the lifeblood of hundreds of my settlements.
My bones tell the final story. The people of my final years were less healthy, more exposed to famine and disease.
The long-distance trade routes that brought me metal from the mountains were severed.
The final act was an act of courage. The decision to leave the past behind and walk in. And just as we taught, we also learned. We adopted new crops, new foods, new ways of surviving.
I also shared my world with giants. The elephant was a creature of immense power, a symbol of royalty and wisdom, even then.
Whatever it was incredibly important. This symbol represented something that unified my entire culture.
But this was my white gold, the plant that changed the world's wardrobe. My gift to you? Comfortable clothing.
In my later years, cremation became more common. A belief, perhaps, in the purifying power of fire and the release of the soul from the body. His three faces suggest a being who sees all. A master of time. Or perhaps hundreds of my towns and cities were left stranded in a new desert. Their reason for being had simply disappeared. My last attempts at writing were like a ghost's whisper. The final generation of scribes had forgotten the elements, and I remained behind. A silent tombstone, a monument to a world that had...
Our gods met their gods, and over time they merged. My old mother goddesses... And so, my great civilization did not vanish. It transformed. My greatest crafts became relics, heirlooms whose true origin was lost to time.
Did I tame them? The evidence is debated, but I clearly knew them well and held them in high esteem.
I built my world from the ground up, literally. The clay from my riverbanks became...
Let's return to this sacred pool. It wasn't just a bath. The surrounding rooms suggest it... His crown of horns links him to the powerful bull or water buffalo, embodying the wild... My finely tuned economy began to sputter. The agricultural surplus that funded everything.
My internal lifelines, the roads and rivers that connect my 1,000 settlements, grew quiet.
The journey was not an easy one. For every family that left, some would not survive the trek.
And so, a new culture was born. Not a Harappan culture, not a local culture. Generations passed. The old ways of making things, the artistic styles of my lost cities.
It's a complex system with hundreds of unique signs. Some think each one represents a word or a syllable. Earthquakes might have changed the landscape, damming up rivers and causing disastrous floods that could have wiped out entire areas. My people didn't die out. They adapted. They moved to areas with more reliable water, forming new communities, new traditions.
But I left behind these clues for you. These beautiful,
and my goods were made to travel. They were the foundation of a vast international trade network that was the engine of my prosperity. We were making flatbreads 4,000 years ago. Some recipes are just too good to change. When we heated it, the wax would melt and run out, the lost wax.
The sounds of my cities were the sounds of life, a symphony of commerce, craft, and conversation.
How did you sign a contract or prove ownership? With your personal seal. It was your signature, your brand, and your bond.
The symbols I held sacred, like the pipal tree, are still sacred here.
And of course, we loved games of pure luck. Though I have to admit, my dice had their own unique logic. We have gleaned a few clues. We are almost certain it was written from right to left. A tiny foothold in a mountain of mystery. It was my signature, my brand logo, my guarantee. It was the mark of a...
Life was simple. Then we'd weave that thread into cloth. It was a slow process, but it meant our clothes were literally homemade. In fact, I was one of the very first to spin cotton into cloth. Fashion has always been my thing.
My people lived in sturdy, multi-story houses made from those fantastic bricks. No flimsy huts for us.
And we had manholes for cleaning and maintenance. I told you, we thought of everything.
Its clever design with air channels underneath kept the city's food supply safe and dry. It was our social security system. Take a look at this girl, cast in bronze 4,500 years ago. Look at that confidence, that attitude. She's one of my most famous faces.
And after nearly a century of trying, no one has been able to read it. Not a single word.
We also hunted to supplement our food. We were deeply connected to the land and its creatures.
We valued our privacy. House entrances were tucked away in side lanes, away from the hustle and bustle of the main streets.
Life in the lower town was vibrant. This is where the real action happened.
I was a Bronze Age civilization, so naturally, we were experts in metallurgy. We worked with copper, bronze, lead, and tin.
I had no grand temples like the Egyptians or Mesopotamians. My spirituality seemed...
I'm the Indus Valley Civilization, and this is the story of my life and my mysterious disappearance.
My cities weren't a chaotic mess. We had a plan, a fortified upper city for important stuff, and a lower town for everyone else. And yes, we had bathrooms. Private, indoor bathrooms. We were basically living in the future.
It had a dedicated water supply and a massive drain. Filling it and emptying it was a piece of cake.
And my bead makers. They were on another level. The original masters of bling.
We built seaworthy ships and sophisticated docks, like the one at my city of Lothal, to handle all the international traffic.
But life wasn't all work and no play. My children had toys, just like kids today.
I wasn't just two big cities. I was a network of over 1,000 settlements, big and small, all connected. My story spans 2,000 years. We're talking about the Bronze Age, a time of incredible innovation. The citadel was likely the center of my government and religious life, the real seat of power.
This is where the magic happened. Every house was connected to my masterpiece.
Dominance. We don't think this was for a casual swim. It was likely a sacred space, used for important rituals.
We crafted beautiful jewelry from gemstones and precious metals. People desired my fashion all across the ancient world.
How do we know? Because my signature seals, my personal business cards, have been found as far away as Mesopotamia.
And the grown-ups? We loved our board games and a good game of dice. Some things never change. For nearly 2 millennia, I thrived. I built, I traded, I grew.
This was my lifeblood, the great Indus River. It fed my people and my cities.
My main streets were wide and laid out in a perfect grid. We were all about that urban planning.
We made tools to build our cities and cultivate our fields. But interestingly, not a lot of weapons. So, you've seen my cities. But who were the people who walked my streets? Well, meet one of us.
At the end of the day, it was about family. About sharing a meal in the home we built.
The climate, which had been so kind to me, began to turn. The monsoons, my lifeblood, became weak and unpredictable.
Thanks to this river, my fields were fertile. We grew wheat, barley, and even cotton.
No winding, confusing alleys here. Everything neat, everything at right angles. So satisfying, right?
It was a network. Wastewater from every home flowed into covered drains on the street, keeping everything clean and hygienic.
Right next door, we had this massive building, my public treasury, in the form of grain.
That's one of my biggest mysteries. For a civilization so large and advanced, we have found very...
My script. My biggest secret of all. Hundreds of unique symbols.
Was healthy and varied.
One of my major rivers, the Ghaggar Hakra, which supported hundreds of my settlements, began to dry up and vanish. My people were forced to move. The smaller settlements were the first to be abandoned, as the land could no longer support them.
Our fashion was all about comfort and elegance. Simple cotton robes were the go-to outfit for the hot climate.
And get this, we even had dentists. We found teeth that were drilled, likely to treat tooth decay.
Even my great cities started to feel the strain. Overcrowding in some areas, decay in others. The old order was breaking down.
We can learn so much from our bones.
My famous bricks became irregular. My careful city planning gave way to haphazard construction. The pride was gone.
And our hair game, it was strong. We had all sorts of intricate styles and fantastic headdresses.
My advanced sanitation system wasn't just for show. It meant fewer epidemics. I was a very clean civilization.
By 1300 BCE, my great cities were empty. My people had moved on. Men kept their hair and beards neat. Whether you were a priest-king or a plumber, you took pride in your appearance. I didn't vanish completely. My spirit, my skills, my DNA, they all live on in the people of this land. Here's something wild. My society seems to have been remarkably equal. There were no huge palaces for kings or massive villas for the super rich. So who was in charge? Maybe not one single king, but a council. Perhaps I was governed by committees of priests or community leaders. Once the waters pulled back, it was time to plant. This cycle of flood and renewal fed my million-strong population.
Wheat and barley were my staple crops. We'd harvest them in the spring to fill our massive granaries.
This surplus was the key. It allowed some of us to become artisans, traders, and engineers, instead of just farmers.
We were a diverse group of people, the original inhabitants of this land. Our faces are still seen in this part of the world today.
Or maybe power was held by different groups. I'm a civilization of committee meetings, not coronations. A true republic, perhaps?
What we really need is a Rosetta Stone, a text written in my script and also in a known language. But we've never found one.
A change in monsoon patterns could have starved my rivers and my fields, making large-scale agriculture impossible.
My reverence for female creative power, for mother goddesses, is a tradition that has echoed through the millennia in South Asia.
Life wasn't all just survival and city planning. We loved to exercise our minds. We had games of skill and...
Every other great Bronze Age civilization has shared its secrets. Their words can be read.
So while my words are lost, for now, my works speak for themselves. Each seal wasn't just a tool for writing.
My story isn't just about grand cities and mysteries. It's a...
Now let's talk about fashion. It all started here, in the fields. I was one of the first civilizations to cultivate cotton.
My jewelry was world famous. Making a single carnelian bead was a long, painstaking process.
The water buffalo was another key partner, perfectly suited to the wet and muddy conditions of my river plains.
We know a few things. We're pretty sure you're supposed to read it from right to left.
My great granaries, the heart of my economy, fell empty. Then we'd smooth them, probably by tumbling them with sand, until they were rounded and beautiful.
And yes, I was a dog person.
And this little fish is one of the most common symbols. Does it mean fish, or maybe a star, or a god? Your guess is as good as mine.
For a long time, people thought I was invaded and destroyed. But there's no evidence of a great war.
My sense of style? You can still see echoes of it today. My bangles never really went out of fashion.
But at the end of the day, this was the heart of my world. Coming together.
And this fish symbol, it's everywhere. Is it literally a fish? Is it the word for a star or a god? First job of the day, fetch the water. And for many of us, that meant a commute of about 5 steps.
While most of our clothes were simple white, we did know how to dye fabrics. Red was a particularly popular color.
But the hardest part was drilling the hole. And for that, we needed incredibly small, incredibly hard drill bits made of flint. My world was also filled with wild creatures. My art shows I respected them, and probably kept a safe distance.
We've even thrown artificial intelligence at the problem. But even the smartest computers are stumped. I'm a code that can't be cracked.
My cities weren't burned to the ground. It seems the end was more of a slow fade than a violent takeover.
Some rhythms of life here have barely changed at all. The connection between the farmer, the bullock, and the soil is timeless.
And we ate well. Grains from our fertile fields, sweet fruits from our orchards, and fish.
We've even used artificial intelligence to search for patterns, to try and force me to speak. And my famous cotton cloth, my white gold, was a technological marvel, softer and lighter than anything they had ever seen.
This was the sound of my mornings, the rhythmic grinding of grain for the day's bread. It was our daily workout.
Want to know how we made that famous bronze dancer? It started with a delicate sculpture made of beeswax. Drilling a single bead could take hours of careful work. One wrong move, and the bead would shatter. Patience was everything.
Okay, let's get back to my biggest puzzle. This is the Dholavira signboard. Think of it as a 4,000-year-old welcome sign that no one can read.
So, what could bring such an organized world to an end? One theory is that the very earth shifted beneath my feet.
So what really happened? The truth is likely a complex mix of all these things. Climate change, shift.
So my great cities are quiet now.
Sore summers. We were farmers, but we never forgot how to be hunters. The wild lands around us provided all of this, the art, the crafts, the surplus, was the product of a stable and well-organized society, where people were free to become specialists. The courtyard was our kitchen. Everything was cooked over an open fire. Simple, effective, and a great place to gather.
Next, we'd cover the wax model in clay, creating a perfect mold of the sculpture inside.
The final step was to bake them. This final firing brought out that deep, beautiful red that everyone in the ancient world wanted. The river was my highway. Barges moved heavy goods like timber and stone far more easily than any cart could. The technology changed, the scale changed, but the spirit of trade and movement in this region never stopped.
My story isn't over. It's a puzzle waiting for you to solve.
It's not a simple alphabet. It's a complex system of over 400 unique signs. My people were not just farmers and craftsmen. We were explorers. We built ships that could cross the ocean and connect worlds. Then came the magic. We poured molten bronze into that hollow mold.
And the smells. The smell of bread baking in the courtyards, the dust from the streets, the scent of the great river nearby.
Amidst all this work, there was always time for play. My children's imaginations were filled with the world they saw around them.
Once it cooled, we'd break the mold. And inside, a perfect, solid bronze copy of the original. Every day, goods flowed in from the countryside. My cities depended on this constant stream of food and raw materials.
Games of skill, games of chance, the laughter of children was another sound that filled my streets.
It all started at home. My 1,000+ settlements were constantly trading with each other. It was one big, happy, internal market.
My sailors were brave. They navigated the open ocean, hugging the coastline on their way to the markets of the Persian Gulf.
From the mountains of Afghanistan, I imported this, lapis lazuli, the most prized stone of the ancients. This life wasn't easy. It meant long months away from home, facing storms at sea and dangers on the...
Some skeptics even wonder if it's a true language at all. Could these just be symbols for a family, a god, or...
And water. The Great Bath proves that I saw water as something more than just for...
My people did what survivors always do. They adapted. They abandoned.
But the search isn't over. New technologies are letting us see beneath the sand. There are hundreds. Raw materials like copper, timber, and stone would travel hundreds of miles from the resource-rich areas to my big city workshops.
Did we remember our golden age? Surely we did. As stories, as legends.
They crushed my history to build their future. An untold amount of my capital city, Harappa, was and on September 20th, 1924, I was officially reintroduced to the world. The news sent shockwaves across the globe.
We became rural again. We spread out into thousands of smaller villages across the land, closer to the water sources that were left.
We became masters of recycling. The great bronze tools of my golden age were melted. For 3,000 years, I slept. My name was forgotten. My cities were just
Life's great milestones, births, marriages, deaths, were moments that brought the whole community together. We celebrated and mourned as one.
We loved games of strategy and chance. It was how we sharpened our minds and spent our leisure time.
You didn't learn a trade from a book, you lived it. You learned the feel of the clay, the heft of the bronze, the breaking point of the stone.
Justice was likely swift, local, and based on reputation and fairness. I was a society built on social contracts, not iron laws.
And my peaceful world gave my people time to observe.
And in my seals, every citizen carried a masterpiece in their pocket. A miniature sculpture that was both a tool.
I believed in the beauty of contrast. My artisans were masters of inlay. Everyone had a role to play. While men often did the heavy field work, the fine, skilled crafts were often in the hands of women.
Did we have music? Of course. While the instruments have decayed,
And my cities were not just for adults. They were playgrounds. The grid of streets and alleyways was a perfect map for childhood adventure.
I understood that cleanliness was a community effort. A clean home was important, but a clean street was essential for the health of all.
That's another one of my puzzles. While some were richer than others, I don't seem to have had rigid social classes. No untouchables, no hereditary aristocracy.
Yes. And I may have even invented the button. Or at least, a personal seal that could be worn like one. A way to fasten...
This stable society, this world of peace and surplus, what did it create? It created time.
And this is the essence of art. To take the chaos of the natural world and distill it into a perfect, meaningful form. And it required a different way of thinking. To create a positive image, my seal carvers had to master the art of carving. This required incredible precision. Each piece had to be cut perfectly to fit the design. It was like painting with solid light.
Art was a social glue. It was a way to express your identity, to celebrate an occasion, to strengthen the bonds of community.
How did we handle disputes? Probably not with police and prisons, but with community justice. Mediation and consensus were likely my tools for keeping the peace.
The elderly were the libraries of my society. They held our knowledge, our stories, and our laws.
I even had toys with moving parts. A simple bit of engineering to bring a clay animal to life.
And this is one of my most radical ideas. While some were wealthier than others, we all lived in roughly the same kind of house. We ate what we needed for the day, and we preserved the rest. Planning for the future was a fundamental part of my philosophy. This level of organization only works with cooperation. We all understood that keeping the public spaces clean and functional benefited everyone.
You know how they say.
I had no schools of brick and mortar. My classrooms were our workshops and our courtyards. Knowledge was passed.
Another beautiful day in our community.
Indeed, everyone looks so content and healthy.
My world had its dangers. The tiger was the ghost of the forest, the ultimate predator.
The sky was full of color and sound. Birds were a constant presence, a source of beauty.
And for my seals, I needed a special stone, steatite, or soapstone, soft enough to be carved with the simple nani. The ability to empty and refill this massive pool suggests the water itself had to be fresh and pure for
Ringosht. But my daily worship may have focused more on the female divine. The thousands of mother goddess.
My art tells the story. The perfect forms gave way to crude copies. The steady hand.
The sacred places were abandoned. The rituals that held our universe together were forgotten.
But these new lands were not empty. Other people were already there. And so began a...
And here, in the north, they met the other great stream of migration, the newcomers arriving from...
This new technology unlocked the vast, fertile plains of the Ganges.
It was a gateway to the spirit world, a living temple. To harm a people was
This was my world. A delicate balance of the wild and the tamed, the natural and the man-made. These weren't for cooking. The presence of offerings suggests they were for sacrifice, a way of feeding the gods of the fire.
Loose. I believed in personal magic. I wore my symbols on my body, amulets to ward off evil, talismans.
My beautiful sanitation system failed. Without a strong central authority to maintain them, my drains choked.
We shared our technology.
There was no great
We taught
invasion,
new ways to till
but
the soil,
perhaps a rise
new
in
ways to
internal
manage crops.
violence.
We began to
A
put
quiet
down
desperation
roots,
that
literally.
sometimes... Their culture was in their words, spoken and memorized. My written script had no chance of survival.
These clans grew into tribes, and the tribes began to form territories. The political landscape of India was being redrawn.
And then there was the rhino, a solitary, armored beast of the wetlands, a symbol of fierce, stubborn strength.
But not all my animals were gods or monsters. Some were simply friends. The humble dog was
agents. I had a good eye. I could see the potential in a simple stone. This dull rock, found only...
And his depiction as a god of fertility connects him to the very creation of life. A true lord of all creatures.
What must it have felt like to live through the end of the world? To see the order your ancestors...
And then, after weeks or months of travel, they found it. New lands, new rivers, new hope.
Not all my people went to the same place. Some moved into the hills. A new metal completed the transformation. Iron. Cheaper and more effective than bronze, it armed the new chief. And they had a new story to tell themselves. An epic literature passed down orally that... Just as I revered certain animals, I held certain plants to be sacred. none more so than the pipal tree. My Bronze Age required bronze, and for that, I needed copper. My miners would venture, but not all my rituals involved water. In some of my cities, fire was the focus, a different path to the divine. But not all my figurines were graceful goddesses. Truce. My trade routes, my global connections, frayed and then snapped. Without a surplus to sell, I had...
When resources become scarce, trust disappears.
My people did not arrive as conquerors. They came as refugees. But they brought with them the gifts of their old world.
We had forgotten the wild. We were people of the city grid. They were people of the open steppe. We had much to learn from each other.
Yes. The old, settled order gave way to a new, more dynamic one. Society organized itself not around cities.
After centuries of living together, we became one. There were no Harappans, no Aryans.
Darn it, not again.
We use those mounds to guide our way.
Indeed, they have served travelers for generations.
And that, sir, is where the treasure of the ancient kings is buried, I tell you.
Nonsense, my good man. Mere folklore.
But even in this new world, some of my old ideas may have found a new voice. The great reformers like
Locals call it Mohenjo-Daro, Mound of the Dead.
All right, men, let's start with the excavation over at that mound. Careful with the perimeter we've marked.
the land itself began to offer up its secrets. The horse changed everything. It brought a new speed of movement, of communication, and of... My artistic traditions transformed. The elaborate painted styles gave way to simpler, more utilitarian form.
Our beliefs began to intertwine. The newcomers adopted my sacred trees and my river.
And after 1,000 years of silence, writing returned. A new script, easy to... Knowledge became sacred text, memorized perfectly, passed from mouth to ear for generations. But access to this knowledge was no longer for everyone.
Centuries later, the world's greatest conqueror arrived in my lands. Alexander the Great. I was noticed again, not as a civilization, but as a geological curiosity, a place where the earth seemed to be made of bricks. But the world was not ready for me. I did not fit the known story of history. And so, I was dismissed.
A hill is a hill, but a hill made of millions of bricks is a city.
This wasn't an invasion that wiped me out. It was a slow, complex process of mixing. My people and the newcomers.
Nothing was wasted. The great tools of my past, too large for the needs of village life, were melted down. And my ideas shaped their gods. My horned lord of the beasts. The economy changed too. Barter gave way to currency. My old, precise weights were replaced by the clink of silver coins.
Even the pottery shows the change. My diverse regional styles vanished, replaced by a single, uniform style.
He marched right past my capital city and never even knew it was there. I was so completely forgotten that the greatest...
My signature began to reappear, my perfect bricks. To the local people, they were like magic, stronger and more perfect than any they could make themselves. The land itself was a place of intrigue and conflict, a crossroads for armies, spies, and adventurers. A perfect place for a secret to hide. And so, I slept. For 3,000 years, I slept. The long sleep was ending. After 3,000 years of silence, the world was finally ready to hear my name. My language faded away, replaced by the Indo-European tongues of the newcomers. This new language, and reborn as the essential tools for our new reality. We were masters of adaptation.
My silent script was forgotten, replaced by a powerful new oral tradition of epic poems and hymns.
And in the earliest hymns of the newcomers, there were faint memories, echoes of a might.
My intricate system of weights and measures faded away. The abstract concept of money, of stamped coin, my lands became a quiet province. The story of India was now being written elsewhere, by others. And so, my slow dismantling began anew. My houses were taken apart to build new houses.
And into this world came a man who was also not what he seemed.
Later peoples built upon my bones, seeing only a convenient hill. They lived and died on...
And so I lay, dreaming.
But this was not the end of my people. It was a transformation. We abandoned the urban dream and returned. My gods did not all die. Some of them merged with the gods of the newcomers. We still craved beauty. But with the great trade routes gone, we created it from the things around us.
Then came the next great revolution. A new metal. Iron. Cheaper, strong.
The age of councils and consensus was over. Power now had a single face, a single voice. The age of kings had begun. Over centuries, the lines blurred completely. We became one people, united by a new language.
And then, a clue. A message in a bottle, washed up on the shores of time.
He was a collector of rumors and whispers. And he heard the one that would change his life, and my story, forever. My perfect bricks became nuisances. My pottery, just broken shards in the dirt.
We became a diaspora. We took our knowledge and our genes and planted them in new soil.
And then a new metal arrived. Iron. With it, strong tools and plows became, and into this new world came new people. They spoke a different language, worshipped different gods, and moved with a speed I had never known.
With iron plows, my descendants could cut through the heavy, fertile soil of the Gangetic Plains.
My great granaries were once a form of social security. Now, granaries served the king.
And the old stories were forgotten. My history was replaced by a new, more exciting history.
And finally, even the myths died. I was no longer a legend, no longer a ghost story.
It was a key without a lock, a word in a language no one living had ever heard. What could it mean?
He held one of my keys in his hand. And where others saw a curiosity, he saw a civilization. And we were no longer alone. New people began to arrive, migrating from the northwest.
My perfect brick cities were a distant memory. We built new homes from the materials at hand.
This fusion is not just a story. It's written in the DNA.
These new cities were different. They were the capitals of warrior kings, built for defense.
My small, personal fire rituals evolved into grand, public spectacles. Religion became a...
But even in this new world, some of my old ideas may have found a new voice. The great reformers like
the earth itself whispered that this was not a natural place. A strange hardness, a hollowness, a memory held in the soil.
Whispers of me began to travel across the oceans. In letters and journals, the first hints of my existence. And so he rode out, a lone adventurer chasing a ghost story, towards a discovery that would rewrite the history of the world.
The key to my civilization became a toy.
Our art found new expression. The rigid rules of the past were gone, replaced by a vibrant new set of regional styles.
My people became pioneers again. We moved into new lands, and with new lands came new ways of life.
And with trade came friendship, and with friendship came family. My people and the newcomers
The focus of civilization shifted east. New kingdoms were born, and with them, the second urban...
My society, which seemed so egalitarian, was replaced by a rigid social order. People were...
The key to my civilization, the symbol of my identity, became a child's toy.
Then came a new kind of eye on the land. Not the eye of a farmer or a poet, but the eye of an empire.
I sat on desks in dusty offices, a piece of an immense puzzle, surrounded by people who didn't know the puzzle even existed.
He wasn't searching for gold, not really. He was searching for a story big enough to buy him his freedom.
My words became meaningless squiggles. My signature, the mark of my identity.
He was wrong about who I was, but he was right that I mattered. He recorded my existence, unknowingly peninsulas. We adapted our diet. In the East, where water was more plentiful, we learned to cultivate rice. New kingdoms rose in the East, built on rice cultivation, iron tools, and the new blended culture.
At first, we were strangers, but we had things the other needed. And so, trade began.
With iron axes, they could clear the dense forests. An agricultural explosion began, one that would fuel the next wave of cities.
The peace I knew for 1,000 years was a distant memory. In this new age, the state's survival depended on its strength in battle.
My symbols lost their meaning. This image, which once held such power for my people, was now just a strange picture on an old stone.
The world's great empires wrote their histories. They chronicled kings and battles. But I was not.
The clue fell into the hands of the new collectors of curiosities. It was an interesting trinket, a piece of exotic India to send back home.
The stories, the stone, the map, the pieces were coming together. Someone just needed the courage to go and look.
The stories, the stone, the map. The pieces were coming together. Someone just needed the courage to go and look.
But no secret can be kept forever. In the 1820s, a fugitive with a curious mind
The news exploded onto the world stage. An entire civilization, older and larger than anyone had.
If we adjust the gradient here, we can avoid that difficult escarpment.
Yes, that saves considerable excavation.
And the westward approach remains viable.
You have learned so much. But the truth is, the work has just begun.
These structures must be cleared. Proceed with caution.
It's not two strange sites. It's one enormous, unknown civilization.
This science can tell you if I was a local or an immigrant who moved to the city for a better life. It makes my...
But today, the greatest discoveries are not made with a shovel, but with a sequencer. The new frontier of my past is a microscopic one.
You can even read my life story from the chemicals I absorbed. Isotope analysis of my teeth reveals the water I drank as a child.
All this data allows you to build a precise picture of my world. Not just my cities, but the very air my people breathed, the rains they prayed for. New homes are being built for my artifacts, ensuring that my story can be told to new generations in the very land where it happened.
I can't believe we actually found it.
After all this time, our hard work paid off.
The genetics confirm it. My people were not newcomers. We were the children of the land.
You are using machine learning to look for patterns that no human could ever spot, teaching a computer to think like my ancient scribes.
My story has become a meeting point for all branches of human knowledge, a grand puzzle that requires every type of expert.
You have learned so much. But the truth is, the work has just begun. My big...
From a tiny fragment of a 4,000-year-old tooth, you can now read my genetic code. This science can tell you if I was a local or an immigrant who moved to the city for a better life. It makes my...
And all of this new context feeds back into the greatest challenge.
My silent script.
The effort to crack my code is now a global, collaborative one.
Ration. You are rebuilding my world in virtual space, creating educational tools that allow anyone...
And the discoveries have not stopped. With every new field season, a new clue emerges, a new piece of art. And so, we are back where we started, in the land that shaped me, and whose secrets I still hold.
You have walked my streets, met my people, and marveled at my mysteries. So what is the takeaway? What is my final message to you?
And your science has proven that my bloodline never vanished. I am still here. You analyze my leftover food to understand my diet. You study the isotopes in the grain to understand the exact climate conditions in which it was grown. The machines haven't cracked the code. Not yet. But they are offering new avenues of inquiry, new ways of...
And as you search for my past, you are also fighting to protect my future.
This. It is this. I understood the value of water. I respected it, I managed it, and I engineered my world around it. A Simmerliv. I believed in cleanliness. I built a society where public health and civic hygiene were a collective responsibility. And there is so much more to find. Hundreds of my settlements have never been touched by a trowel. So do not think of me as a lost civilization. I am not lost.
Waiting for the right tools, the right minds.
I am a chapter of the human story that is still being written. My name is the Indus Valley Civilization.
The rest is up to you.